up, guys, and welcome back to Gaming Hot Takes, a series where I rank your hot takes about various video games. Today we'll look at another N64 classic, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Now we're only including the original N64 version, so no 3DS version, no ROM hacks, no fan games, or anything like that. So with that said, let's get to your hot takes. Forest Temple sucks. I could not disagree more. I love the Forest Temple. One of my favorite temples in all of Zelda, in my opinion. I just love the atmosphere. I love the boss fight. The Phantom Ganon boss fight is incredible. I enjoy fighting the Poe sisters. I just enjoy the layout of the overall dungeon, I would say. So, yeah, this is a hard disagree. I don't know why anybody... I guess maybe there's, like, certain parts of it that can be a bit hateable, but on an overall sense, the Forest Temple does not suck, so this right here is a hard disagree for me. I don't like the rolling. Specifically, I don't like how he stops for a brief moment before continuing. Yeah, I gotta say the controls definitely could be a bit better. Now, obviously, it is part of the old, like, 3D 64 era, so those games didn't have the best controls, like Mario 64, we talked about in the first episode. I don't know if the rolling was one of my bigger issues. I think for me a big issue was aiming with like the bow was definitely a bit clunky because, you know, you don't have gyro. And then some of the movement overall was a bit, I wouldn't say finicky, but a little bit rough. The rolling for me, I would say, is actually one of the better moves, maybe. That last part I can definitely see, though, where he does stop for a brief moment before he continues rolling. I can see that argument, but for me, I wouldn't say it's one of my bigger issues with the game in terms of controls. I think there's a lot more that you can definitely criticize in terms of how Link moves. But yeah, I guess I can kind of see where you're coming from here with this one. Without the nostalgia, it's an okay game. Nostalgia really is something that people use as an excuse to like a lot of the old games, which I kind of am a victim of myself. I mean, there's a lot of games that I've played that critics definitely don't like, that I personally like. But for this one, I don't know if I really agree that nostalgia is the reason why people still love it. I mean, obviously they have memories of playing it as a kid during the 64 days. But it's still just a great game. It's got great dungeons, it's got a great story, great bosses, great world design here and there. So, for me, I wouldn't say the nostalgia is the reason why. Well, again, I didn't play it as a kid, so I can't really attest too much to the nostalgia part of it. But even if I did, I probably wouldn't say nostalgia is a reason why I love this game, because, you know, there's a lot of games I played back in the day that, like, the reason why I still love them isn't because of the nostalgia, is because they're actually, like, really, really great games. So yeah, I guess I can't fully attest to the nostalgia part of this comment here, but I guess I can see where you're coming from there, but for me, I just like it because it's a great game overall. I wouldn't say nostalgia is a reason why me, and I assume a lot of people also wouldn't use that as an excuse for why they still love Ocarina of Time. I like the original graphics. Also, I like Mido, and I think he's a good character. So we got a 2-for-1 here, and unfortunately, I disagree with both of them. I think the graphics in the original, not having played the original recently, aren't really the best. I am not a fan of the pre-rendered environments in, like, Castletown, for example. It looks very, very rough, and it's also very choppy with the very, very choppy frame rate. So definitely don't agree there. I think the 3DS remake definitely has, better graphics. I mean, you can still like them. I mean, you are saying you just like them. You're not saying they're better than 3DS, but if you said that they were better than 3DS, I would definitely argue with you, because they're definitely not. Absolutely not. As far as Mido, I don't like him. He's kind of an asshole. He, you know, when the Deku Tree dies, he legit blames Link for it, right? He's like, oh my god, you killed the Deku Tree. How could you do this? It's like, you weren't even there, dude. Did you not see what I did? I defeated the virus in the Deku Tree, and, like, he's thinking that I killed him? You know? So, I could see why people might like Mido, but for me, I've never liked him in the original or the remake. He's just kind of a dick, and he kind of assumes too much, I would say. And the fact that he blames Link right off the bat for the Deku Tree's demise really did seal the deal for me as far as me not liking him. I think he's kind of an a-hole. I'd say the Water Temple is a pretty well-designed dungeon for the most part, but I suppose nobody really hates it as much as they used to. So I was very vocal in my recent Ocarina of Time dungeon tier list, where I, now having played the original Water Temple, I don't like it. The reason why the remake wasn't bad for me is because you have the touchscreen with 3DS where you can just swap your boots right off the bat. Meanwhile, in the original version, you have to pause the menu every single time and then keep swapping them out, and it wastes so much time. Like, literally half of that dungeon, you're in the item menu screen swapping your boots. It's not fun. I'm not sure of the general consensus when it comes to the original Water Temple. I would assume a lot of people share my thoughts on it, where it's like, it definitely is not a great dungeon. It could be a little bit annoying. But maybe people, you might have a point here. Maybe people who played it back in the day, like when the game first came out, maybe now they kind of forgive some of that stuff, where it's like, you know what, the boot swapping thing is kind of still annoying, but it's still a fun dungeon, I guess. I still think I would probably not like it a whole lot. But yeah, I see what you're talking about here, because I do think people maybe don't hate it as much now as they did back then, because they probably played this game a bunch of times, where they're just kind of used to the Water Temple at this point. Maybe that might be the case with me. Maybe if I replay Ocarina of Time again, I might like the Water Temple a little bit more. But for right now, I definitely still really dislike it. The worst temples / dungeons to me were Lord Jabu Jabu's Belly and the Shadow Temple, and the best temple in my opinion was the Forest Temple. Thank God somebody likes the Forest Temple, unlike that first hot take where they really just said Forest Temple sucks, because I agree, the Forest Temple is one of the best, easily. Jabu Jabu's Belly and Shadow Temple, I disagree there. I think the worst ones for me are probably, Water Temple, I would say kinda the Ice Cavern in a way, and then maybe, maybe, I don't know, like, most of the dungeons are at least good, but I don't think Jabu Jabu and Shadow Temple are up there. I think they're some of the better ones in my opinion, because, you know, Jabu Jabu, you got literally a whole dungeon inside of a fish, and the Shadow Temple, you got, you know, you got the Lens of Truth, you're seeing invisible walls and such, you got that cool ghost ship section, you got a pretty okay boss fight. I'm not a huge fan of Bongo Bongo, and then Jabu Jabu's boss fight is pretty cool, where you got Baronade. That was a cool boss fight. So yeah, I disagree. I think Jabu Jabu and Shadow Temple are two of the better dungeons in Ocarina of Time, and I do agree about the Forest Temple. Forest Temple is one of the best, so thank you for saying that. Unlike that first person. It's a B-tier game. It's a good game, but it's not the best game of all time, or even the best Zelda game of all, like people have made it out to be. It's the best game of its time, maybe, but that time is long over. I think you kinda nailed it here. I wouldn't put it at B-tier. I'd probably still put it at, like, either high A or low S, because it is a really, really good game. The remake for sure is definitely at least S tier for what it changed about the original, made it a better experience. But yeah, see, the thing with me is, I think there's a large group of people that confuse the word iconic for the word best, right? So, because people think that Ocarina of Time is the most iconic Zelda game, which it kind of is, people assume that, oh, it's the best Zelda game, right? It's most iconic, which I definitely disagree with. Same with Mario, too, because Mario 64, to me, is probably the most iconic of all the Mario games, but it's not the best Mario game in my opinion. So same deal here with Zelda. So I do agree with that. I definitely don't think it's the best Zelda game of all time. There are a bunch I'd put over Ocarina of Time personally, like Wind Waker, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild. But yeah, I wouldn't put it at B tier. It's definitely still at least A or S for me. But I do agree that, you know, maybe it was the best game of its time, like during that era of N64, 3D platformers, adventure games. So yeah, of its time for sure, but nowadays you can tell that it's aged a bit, and the original version especially has not aged that well in my opinion. So yeah, not a B tier game, but I do agree that it was probably the best of its time, but nowadays to me it is definitely not the best Zelda game. It was the best Zelda game when it released, but then Majora's Mask came out. Also, the Water Temple's difficulty has always felt wildly exaggerated since it mostly just comes down to people not paying attention to something that felt obvious. Still, it's a great game that I continue to enjoy. So, I might be in the minority here, I'm not sure, but I put Majora's Mask below Ocarina of Time. I had not played the original version, but I did play the remake, and personally, I felt Majora's Mask definitely didn't feel as grand to me as Ocarina of Time did. I think the story, for sure, the overall narrative is better in Majora, but, as far as the, like, main story gameplay, like the dungeons, it did feel like it was missing a bit. Like, there wasn't enough meat on the bone, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'd put Majora below Ocarina, but in terms of the story, definitely Majora over Ocarina. Water Temple, we talked about. I think it's not that exaggerated because, again, the whole issue is just the whole swapping your boots thing. Because in the original version, you're swapping them like every 30 seconds to a minute, and you have to pause the menu every single time to do it, and it just becomes such a huge slog. So I wouldn't say it's that exaggerated, because I do think a lot of people agree with me on that. But yeah, like I said at the end, it's still a great game that people still enjoy. It's still a fantastic Zelda game. Very iconic entry in not only Zelda, but the entire, you know, gaming franchise as a whole, or I guess gaming genre. But, yeah, great game, but Water Temple definitely deserves what people are saying about it, because it definitely still is an annoying dungeon. Ocarina of Time has the best dungeons, the best overworld, and doesn't compromise on its length like other competitors for best do, like Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, or Wind Waker. Man, we got a spicy one here, hold up. So, best dungeons, I would say it's one of the best dungeon lists overall, but definitely not the best dungeons, like on an overall sense. I think probably Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess, kind of share that, feat. Best overworld, definitely not. I would say Wind Waker for me was definitely a lot more fun to explore. I would say Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild probably as well. But yeah, as far as your last comment here, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, and Wind Waker, I think those games definitely earn what people are praising about them when it comes to, like, the story, the general gameplay. There are some things to criticize in those games, like Majora's Mask. I said, you know, the main story could use a bit more to it. Twilight Princess I love to death, but I do think it's, the world's a bit empty overall, and the art style definitely is not the best. It kind of hasn't aged that well. And then Wind Waker is, you know, great art style, great way to travel around each island with the sailing. But there are some quests in that game, and the dungeons definitely aren't the best. And some of the quests in that one aren't that much fun to do. So I can see where you're coming from on that last bit, but I would still put TP and Wind Waker above Ocarina for what I enjoyed about those games. But yeah, I wouldn't say Ocarina has the best dungeons overall or the best overworld. Maybe one of the best if we're, like, you know, comparing every Zelda game when it comes to those things. But yeah, I wouldn't say Ocarina, for as good as it is, definitely doesn't have the best, or it doesn't have the best of those elements, in my opinion. Alright folks, and that is it for your Ocarina of Time hot takes. So let me know what you thought was the hottest take in today's video, and if you want to submit your own hot take for a future video, follow me on X, Blue Sky, and on Discord, because I am a part of various servers when it comes to certain franchises. So if you see me ask the question, then you can answer with your hot takes there. But I guess I will see you guys in the next Gaming Hot Takes video, and until then, bye!